Okay, so scaling analysis we did. Okay, let me just. Okay, so we looked at the equations in the first two classes, and then we found okay there are two more terms because of the rotation of the Earth, and those things we derived, and then we got the equations in terms of U and in terms of V. So I'll not repeat that. So we got some terms of this advection. Then we got Coriolis force here, and then we also discussed about the frictional term, which is represented here. Then we last class we said that okay, this is very difficult to solve these equations because there are so many nonlinear terms, and and it is almost impossible analytically to solve these equations. So and most often we may not need to solve this equation. That is the important part. So we looked at okay, what are the when we can actually avoid certain terms so that we our life become simpler. So in order to do that, then we introduced a method called scaling analysis, okay, which allows which allows us to remove certain terms which may not be very important in this case. Okay, so one such terms we found is the Reynolds number, which provides an idea that if whether the flow will be turbulent or linear. Okay, that means whether the nonlinear terms, in terms of advections, whether they are important or not. Those terms are important or not, and then we looked at situations, real world situations in terms of oceanography. That what kind of situations, what are the what kind of amplitude we may expect for different quantities. So we looked at typical ocean circulation in the interior ocean. Sorry, interior ocean where the length scale is about 1,000 kilometer. Usually the length scale is about 1,000 kilometer, more than 1,000 in fact. Say for example, Indian Ocean or the Atlantic or the Pacific is the largest ocean. The length scale is about 10,000 kilometers. So the 1,000 kilometer is reasonable. The usual speed is about 10 centimeter per second. That means 1 meter per second in an interior ocean away from the boundaries. And the depth 1 kilometer, in fact it is about 4 to 5 kilometer, or in fact more than that sometime. So we are talking about a this one a order of amplitude. So in that case it is 1 kilometer. For our easy calculations we can always keep 4 or 5 kilometer, but then your calculations will be, you have to just deal with not one but some other numbers. It will become difficult. And a typical time scale for a motion, 10 days or 2 weeks. We are not looking at anything very high frequency, that means changing very rapidly. Those kind of things we are not discussing here. So it is about 10 days. So if we put these numbers, but there is one term that we don't know, that is W here. W means vertical velocity. In ocean it is very easy to measure horizontal velocities. Okay, so for example, you go to the ocean, put a current meter. There are instruments called current meters. Okay, what it does is that it is like you have a fan, and and the water is moving inside the fan. So the fan will rotate, right? So it is like in our normal fan. So the fan will rotate. So as it will rotate, so it will record the velocity. Okay, so these are the very old technologies. But now it works in a different way. Now you also have another instrument called ADCP. ADCP means acoustic Doppler current profiler. What it does is that you have a sensor, an instrument which sends sound signal. Okay, so say suppose I put a sensor at 100-meter depth in the ocean. Okay, and then it will send sound signal to the top from 100-meter depth to the surface. But what will happen is that some sound signal will get reflected due to the particles that are floating in the water. For example, zooplankton, phytoplanktons. okay, suspended materials. So those small organic or inorganic metals will reflect that sound. So it will go back to the instrument again, and then it will read that reflection. So this way, this is called acoustic Doppler. This one, and then based on this, the travel time, you can estimate, okay, how fast the particles are moving. Okay, and from there you can estimate what is the velocity. So these are the kind of methods that are available, or instrument, you can say instrument that are available in order to measure the horizontal velocities like U and V. But vertical velocities, as we saw last time also, so in this case, say W, we try to calculate W here with the same scaling method using equation of continuity, and we found it is 10 to the power minus 4 meter per second. So it's a much small. Okay, there is no instrument. That means it. So, for example, in a day, it travels only a meter. Okay, few meter from one depth to the other depth. So there is no such instant, and then you have a lot of chaos going on inside. So there is already a flow going on, okay, and then there is a vertical flow. The vertical flow is very small, so it is almost impossible to measure it using a direct instrumentation. Okay, so but we can always estimate it using some indirect methods. So that is what happens. That is the case for the W. So W is usually not known like U and V, but it can be estimated. Okay, and that estimations, I'm not going into that now. You can estimate using temperature salinity change over time and all this. Okay, so that's how the W is. W is very small compared to U and V. And then we can easily calculate Coriolis parameter F using the latitude of a particular position. Phi is the latitude. So at 45 degree north or south, your F will be around 10 to the power minus 4 per second. Okay. Unit is per second because it is a frequency. Then we looked at AX, AY, and AZ, that the frictional parameters. And we put all those values in W equation first. So when you put W equations, U, V, W, and P is basically rho G H in this case, it assumed. And then AX, AY, AZ, you get this time derivative of W, which is of order of 10 to the power minus 7, minus 10. The advections terms are 10 to the power minus 11, much smaller. Then pressure gradient term is about 10. Okay. And the rest of the terms is also very small, except this G, that is also order of 10. So this pressure gradient term is equivalent to G, and the rest of the terms are much smaller than the rest. So what we found is that the pressure gradient balances the gravitational acceleration, and that's how you get the this one hydrostatic approximation, which actually this is basically hydrostatic equation, but we call it as an approximation because you are avoiding certain terms here. They are small but not zero. Okay, so that's why it's a good approximation. That's why we're calling it as an approximations, because other terms are non-zero, but they are much small compared to the term like G and the pressure gradient. Okay, so this is called hydrostatic approximation. So that means in a moving fluid, so hydrostatic equation is what? In a static fluid, right? That's what we have read earlier in your previous classes. So this is the same hydrostatic equation, but it is applied to a moving motion. That means in the typical ocean velocity field, you can always use the same hydrostatic approximation or hydrostatic equation to define that motion. Okay, so this approximation is quite valid for oceanic flows. Okay, and then we looked at the scaling for U and V. They're basically same, and then we found that the pressure gradient is actually balanced by the Coriolis force. So this we call these three equations we get, where del P del X balances by V, del P del Y balances by U, with the multiplied by Coriolis parameter, and then you have the hydrostatic equation. So these two balances, the when pressure gradient balances the Coriolis force, it's basically called geostrophic balance. Okay, so this is what we did till in the last class. In this class, we'll try to advance from here. Okay. So when you're talking about hydrostatic balance, that means we already avoided certain terms. We avoided that advection term. Okay, we are assuming they are very small. We also avoided the frictional terms. That means we are talking about a fluid flow which is away from the boundaries. The frictional flows are less. So the flow field basically that we're talking about is called frictionless motion. So we're going to avoid friction altogether. Okay, so this is the thing that we're going to discuss. So so this is, as we actually mentioned, that based on scaling, that hydrostatic approximation is a quite a bit of good approximation for a static flow, as for a moving flow, and even yeah, so for an interior moving flow. So this is just another way of looking at it. Okay, so what we're trying to see is that, okay, left hand side you have the full Navier-Stokes equations, and we are saying that, okay, we want to know whether these equations are actually in line with what we know so far. Okay, so in order to do that, that means if we assume that there is no flow in the ocean, okay, or you can say it's a static motion. So if we assume that the flow fields are completely zero, that means it is neither driven by the wind nor by the radiative forcing. Then whether that will relate to what we know so far, that means we already know in a static field you get in hydrostatic approximation. Okay, so whether that is what we get, so that is what we wanted to find it out. So this is our U equation and V equation, and this is our W equation. What we are assuming? We are assuming that the flow field is zero. So neither it is moving nor it is accelerating. Okay, so that means U is zero. That means it is in a state of rest, and du dt is also zero. That means it is not accelerating. Okay, so if you actually use that u equals to 0 and du dt equals to 0, then what will happen? So du dt is equals to 0, that means there is no acceleration, then all these terms are going to 0. Then we are assuming that u is also equals to 0. So u basically means u and v both, horizontal velocity is 0. So this term is going to 0. This is also 0 because this is another velocity component. And since u, v and w is 0, so this term is also 0. Okay, this is basically u and u only. Del square u by del x square, del square u by del y square, del square u by del z square, because it is in a u x momentum equation. Okay, in x direction. So all these terms is 0. So what we are left with? We are left with this term, minus alpha del p del x equals to 0. So we are left with minus alpha del p del x equals to 0. Similarly, if we do the same treatment here in the V equation, what we'll get? We'll get again minus alpha del p del y equals to 0. What does it mean? That means P is basically constant. So that means P is constant in respect to x and in respect to y. That means the pressure gradient is 0. That means the pressure at any given point of a surface. Okay, say I am at place A and there is another place B in the ocean. In the both the place pressure is same. So that means there is no elevation. Okay, so there's it's basically flat in x. Similarly, it is a flat in y. So that means there is no sea level difference from one place to the other place. So like a lake, okay, still lake. So that is what it is. That's what we are actually trying to find out, right? So if there is no motion, so the surface should be the flat. What happens to here? In this equation also will reduce to This one, del P del Z minus alpha del P del Z equals to minus G. Okay, so this should be, okay, there is a mistake here. Yeah, it should be this. Because it is in a minus alpha del P del Z, and this is minus G in same side, right? If you take one term to the other side, then you get this become positive. So alpha is basically nothing but 1 upon rho. 1 upon rho del P del Z equals to minus G. So this is again, we are getting the same hydrostatic balance that we have seen for the static flow. Now there is one interesting point here. So even though we are basically getting a same hydrostatic equation, but we are getting a minus sign here in our hydrostatic equation. What do you know? Del P del Z equals to rho G, right? That's what you usually have written. But now you have a minus sign here. That is something new in this case. Okay. Can anyone tell me that why there is a minus sign here? So if we use the Navier-Stokes equation, then we are getting a minus sign.
Sir,
That is,
pressure. No, sir, cannot recall.
so P equals to, say, for example, rho is constant. That means alpha is constant. Then P will be equals to rho G Z minus rho G Z. Okay. So that's another hint. So it will be P equals to at any given point, pressure is equals to rho G Z, but with a minus sign.
Pressure increases when Z decreases, or mm,
Yeah, it happens because you remember I told you that okay, we have to put our the coordinate axis at the surface of the ocean. Okay, that's where our coordinate axis is. So if it is surface of the ocean, then the z is upward to the atmosphere. So positive z is up in the atmosphere. But if you go deep into the ocean, then it is minus z. Okay, so if Z increases in the ocean, that means minus Z is increasing. Then the pressure will increase. So that minus, this minus sign is basically nothing but representing that it is, you have to go deeper into the ocean in order to increase the pressure. Okay, and that will be minus Z. Means Z will be negative. So at 10-meter depth means basically Z equals to minus 10. Okay, or 20-meter depth means Z equals to minus 20. So if you then put Z here, then it will be P equals to rho G 20. Minus minus will cancel. Okay, so that's how you will get the pressure. So this negative sign is because of the choice of the axis which is sitting on the surface of the ocean. Okay. Okay, so we got in hydrostatic equilibrium, and we found that yeah, that is very good approximation. And not basically, if the ocean is in rest, we'll actually go into the same thing which we already know from the our static fluid dynamics. Okay. Okay, so that is done. So second thing is that we'll be dealing with this inertial motion. So till now, in the equations, what we have done is that we have always assumed that there is no acceleration in time. We have always talked about a steady fluid when there is no motion, or if there is a motion, then there is no change in the motion in time with respect to time. That means there is no acceleration. But if suppose there is an acceleration, and if we assume all these other terms like the friction is not there, we are talking about a frictionless motion anyway now. Okay, non-linear terms are usually weak in an open ocean, so we are not going to discuss that also. And we are assuming one more thing, that the pressure gradient, there is no pressure gradient in horizontal. That means there is no change in the sea level. If sea level at point A is 10 centimeter, at point B is also 10 centimeter. That means the sea level is flat. Okay. So why we are taking it there? Because we are assuming that there is no external force into the ocean. Because as soon as there is a pressure change, so that will also be act as a force that we don't want at the moment. So when you're talking about inertial motion, it basically we are dealing with a motion which is, say for example, you have a wind that is blowing for some time. As the wind is blowing, it will act on the surface of the ocean, and the ocean is also will start to move in the same direction, in the direction of the wind field, isn't it? But if wind stop, abruptly wind stop, what will happen to the ocean? Okay, ocean will not stop abruptly, so it will continue to flow for some time. Okay, and this kind of flow is basically called inertial motion. Okay, that happens due to the inertia. That's why the name is called inertial motion. So we are trying to look at such motions. Okay, so we are assuming that there is no pressure gradient. So because if there is a pressure gradient, then that can actually change the flow, that can stop the flow or that can accelerate the flow. So we don't want that kind of force. So basically we don't want any force. Okay, we are assuming that there is a motion and then the forcing got stopped because of something, and then the flow has to be free, so without having any external force. So that's why we're assuming that okay, del p del x is 0, del p del y is 0, so the motion should be due to inertia only. There should not be any external force. We are also assuming that there is no vertical velocity, so the flow is basically horizontal motion, so there is no vertical motion at the moment. Okay, so if we use this condition here, what will happen? We are assuming that there is an acceleration. So del u del t is there, but we are assuming this term is negligible. Away from the ocean, motion is not turbulent, very linear, because anyway we do not have any forcing. Okay, so there is no possibility of having a turbulent motion. So this is also very small. I am also assuming that there is no gradient. There should not be any external pressure, external force, so the gradient force is also 0. Okay, so W is also 0, that means this term is also small, gone, and there is no friction. Okay, so if we do that, then what we'll get? We'll get in the left hand side del u del t, it is balanced by Fv. So the first equation will lead to du dt, because there is no del here, because anyway this term is 0. So del u del t is basically du dt. We are assuming that. So du dt is equals to Fv. If we do the same thing for the v equation, we'll get dv dt equals to minus Fu, because you have a minus sign here. Okay, so du dt Fv and dv dt Fu. So if we have to solve this, okay, if we have to solve this, what we have to do? We have to replace one variable from one equation. So we have done these things before in our 12th standard. So we'll remove v. Okay, we'll replace v using this equation. How you can do that? If you take a derivative of this equation with respect to t, you will have d square u dt square and then equals to f dv dt. So if you replace the dv dt from this equation, you can replace it by minus fu. Okay, so if you do this, then the equations will be this way. So d square u dt square plus f square u is equals to 0. It's a quadratic differential equation of second order. Okay, very simple equation. Now we have to solve this. So in order to solve this, we are assuming that the solution will be of this order: a cos ft plus b sin ft. Why we are assuming this? Because see, in any motion in the ocean will be of a form of a wave. So you have a wind, so wind stop, then it will leave wave. So equations will have to be in wave form. Okay, so we are assuming that the form is of cos and sine, because cos is in wave and sine is also a wave. Okay, sinusoids. So we are assuming that E equals to a cos ft and plus b sin ft. where A and B are unknown. We have to find it out. What is A, what is B. We are also assuming that, okay, at time t equals to 0, there was no velocity. That means the fluid or the ocean was on a state of rest at time t equals to 0. Then there was some wind, so it got some velocity, and then wind stopped, and we want to look at what is the solution. So at u equals to 0, t equals to 0. So if you put t equals to 0 here, this term will be 0 because sine 0 is 0, but cos 0 will be 1. So a equals to u is also 0. So a is equals to 0. If you put t equals to 0, this term will be 0. Cos ft will become 1. So that means a. And the left hand side is also 0 because u equals to 0 at t equals to 0. So your a will be equals to 0. So that means your u will be b sine ft. Okay. If your u is equals to b sine ft, what is your v? Your v will be, we can calculate from here, right? Or from here. So du dt equals to fv. So u we know b sine ft. So then from there f we can, so from there v will be b cos ft. Okay, just take a derivative of u with respect to t. So it will become bf cos ft. So there will be another f here, and this f and that f will cancel. So you will have b equals to b cos ft. And then you can find out the value of b also. Okay, so in this case b equals to written as a vh. Okay, I'll just write. So b equals to vh. So b equals to vh is equals to root over u square plus v square. Why? If you take u square plus v square, you will have b square in, take it out, you will have sine square plus cos square. Sine square plus cos square is always 1. Do you know that? Yeah, sine square plus cos square is 1. So you will have a b square. So from there you can easily get b equals to root over u square plus b square. We have noted it down as vh. Okay. And if you put it here, then you will get u equals to vh sine ft and v equals to vh cos ft. Okay, so this is my inertial motion. So what it's saying is that the speed of the motion will be vh. Okay, and it will have a rotational velocity because you have a angular velocity field which is equals to f. Okay, so my flow field will look like a cycle, a circular motion, because u is sine and v is cos. It will be like a cycle with a speed of vh and angular velocity f. Okay, so now we have movie time. I just wanted to show you that, okay, how it will look like. Okay, so before looking at the movie, tell me, I'll tell you that, okay, what is this? So we have a ocean which is from 20 east to 100 east. Ideal ocean, okay, it's a box, but you have an ocean, and it is 10 north to 50 north. So we are in a northern hemisphere. Okay. And initially there is no sea level, so the this one, the green that you are seeing here, shed, is basically the height of the sea level in terms of centimeter. Okay, so initially it is 0, but I don't know whether I can go to. Okay, initially it is close to 0. Okay, but movie start like this, so I cannot actually help it to make it, to show you as a 0. Okay, yeah, it is 0. Okay, so it is here somewhere in the green. So everything is 0. and I have a wind which is tau y. That means meridional wind. There is no zonal wind, only meridional wind from south to north. The wind is toward north. Okay. So everywhere I have wind, same wind towards north. So if wind towards north, we call it as southerly winds. Okay, from south. So wind is always from early, like southerly means from south to north. Okay, for current will tell is a northward. Okay, so that is the difference between wind and atmosphere. We are talking about atmosphere, you talk about from where it is coming, whereas when you talk about the ocean circulation, we'll say that okay, towards where it is going. Okay, so it is a southerly wind from south to the north, blowing continuously. Okay, going continuously, and then we'll see. So initially it is state of rest, but because of the wind, the two things happens. One, you have an inertial motion. As soon as the wind blows, you will get an inertial motion. But since wind is not stopped, you also have something called a Ekman transport. We'll read it later. So if wind is blowing from south to north, then it will try to have a velocity which is towards the east. Okay, in the northern hemisphere because of the Coriolis force. So it is called Ekman transport. Okay, we don't have to deal with that. So let's see how it is. So I'm just tapping every frame by frame, and you will see these vectors. They are basically inertial motion. How they look like? Okay, so they just rotating clockwise. U equals to this one is sinusoid. V is also sinusoid. So we will have always have a circular motion, and that is what is happening because since the wind is uniform, it is not changing with time. So your velocity field is also not changing with time, and it is just rotating. Okay. So just play it. I don't know if I can slow it down. Okay, so after some time things are very different. It is because of something else. Okay, and you also see a red patch here and a blue patch here in this side. Okay, that is called Kelvin wave, coastal Kelvin wave. You must have heard of it already. Kelvin wave, Rossby waves. If not, then you will listen to those things as your course will progress. Okay, maybe next year or something. So they are another kind of wave that generate due to the boundaries and due to the winds, and that finally interfere with the inertial motion. So they are no longer look same as in the beginning. They got very different. Okay, that is because of the interference. Uh, but we are here. One another assumptions we are doing is that f is not changing with respect to latitude. Okay, so f is same. What is our f? F is our angular velocity. Remember, so all vectors are rotating in the same speed. So whether latitude at 15 degree north, whether latitude 45 degree north, they are rotating in a same speed. Okay, so if f is the angular velocity, then the period, sorry, this is the period. So the period is basically 2 pi by f. If angular velocity is f, then the period will be 2 pi by f. So my angular velocity period is same for every latitude. So it is basically rotating at the very same fashion. But if we assume that no, it is like a real ocean, we have the ocean where f is changing with latitude. That means it's a beta plane. It is called a beta plane. If f is changing with latitude, it is called a beta plane. So, let me play. So again, it started with the rest. Okay, and then slowly wind starts, but now f is changing with the latitude. Okay. Now you will see a very surprisingly different pattern. Okay. Not all vectors are of same size. The vectors which are towards the equator is somewhere here, and this is subtropics. So the vectors which are close to equator are larger than the vectors that are away from the equator, isn't it? And also, one more thing to note. Just let me take it. One more thing I want to show is that the rotation speed. So our period is 2 pi by f. Now at the close to the equator, f is small, and as you go towards the pole, f will be large. Okay. So when f is small, 2 pi by f will be large. That means my period closer to the equator will be large compared to the equator. So that means that the rotational velocity, period, will be slower. So the vector rotation will be much slower compared to the northern side. Okay. So we just want to see it here. So okay, let's look at two vector. One is this, other one is this, and then slowly you have to see that the top one is rotating much faster than the bottom one. I'm not sure whether you can see it clearly. Okay, let's look at here. So both are directed towards here. Let's see if the top one is rotating faster. Faster, right? So it moved already horizontal. So let's look, but I don't know how to go back.
Sir, the bottom one, the wave, the length is so small, and the upper one, the wavelength is large, I think. This in this.
Yeah, that is because of something different. Okay, I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is, so the bottom one is, don't look at the first vector, because that has something, because it is very close to the boundary, so it will be influenced. So look at the second one, okay, which will be less influenced. Say for example this one, this vector. Can you see my cursor? And then the other
Yeah.
one which is just little smaller the top. Okay, so second and third. Okay, I'll look at these two vector, and what I want to see is that if the this one is rotating slower than this one. Okay, why it should
Okay.
happen? Because that is two, it is rotating with a with a period of 2 pi by f. So here f is more, sorry, here f is less compared to here. So that means the period will be more here compared to this smaller vector. Okay, so this is my theory. I just want to see it whether that happens. So basically, we have to see this. If they are both towards in the same direction, we'll just see that, okay, after one revolution, whether which one comes first here. Okay, and that will tell us, okay, whether that is what is happening. See, so now it is already straight, and this is still not straight. Is it clear to everyone? Okay, you have to notice yourself. Okay, it is interesting, but let me know if you are not finding it. So see, still it is towards northeast, but it is towards east. That means it got rotated faster. Okay, so that is
Yes.
what is
Yes.
happening because of the f. The periodicity is 2 by f, and f is small close to the equator compared to the north. So my period is more towards the equator. So what is happening is that in the inertial motion, the rotation, that is, it is cyclic. It is it is clockwise in the northern hemisphere, and the north clockwise motion will be slower in the close to the equator compared to the if you go to the towards the pole. Okay, and the frequency of this inertial motion is, sorry, not frequency, period of this inertial motion is What? Just I told you. What is the period? 2 pi by f. Okay, so the frequency is f. So the frequency of inertial motion is f. Period is 2 pi by f. So f determines, that means the Coriolis parameter determines how fast it will rotate. Okay, inertial motion at any given latitude. If you go to the southern ocean, what will happen? It will behave in a similar way, but the rotation will be anti-clockwise. Okay, rotation will be anti-clockwise. In northern hemisphere, it is clockwise. In the southern hemisphere, it will be anti-clockwise. Okay, so this is how the inertial motion behaves. Okay, so let's go back to our presentation. Movie is over. Okay, so the next thing that we want to look at, okay, now we have already done. If you do not consider friction, you can always get in a steady, if there is no motion in the fluid, we get the hydrostatic equation. Then we looked at, okay, if you add du dt into that, then you get an inertial motion, okay, which circles around because of some wind or something else. Any disturbance, there will be a inertial motion. So from there now we'll go back, we'll look at geostrophic motion. So geostrophic motion, we already discussed that pressure gradient force balances our Coriolis force. Okay, so in this slide we'll try to see that, okay, how it works. So before going into that, we need to understand two things. One is the geopotential surface, other one is the isobaric surface. The geopotential surface you already discussed before. So when we try to find out G star, you remember, that means when we were trying to deal with that centrifugal force, we added that to the acceleration, gravitational acceleration G, and then we found a G star. That time we said that, okay, G star, which is the modified version of G, is basically perpendicular to a surface always, and that the surface is called geopotential surface. This basically means that the potential, geopotential along that surface will not change. Okay. So we are, and that is also called level surfaces. An example of level surface is when, say for example, a lake, there is no wind going on, the surface will be very flat, and that is a geopotential surface. Okay, so you are representing phi is constant, that is my level surface. There is one more surface that is called isobaric surface. Isobaric surface means a surface on which the pressure is same everywhere. What is pressure? Pressure is equals to minus rho g z. You found out? So it is possible that my isobaric surface is in tilted form of the level surface. When it can happen? It can happen due to two things. One, because suppose you have a wind, so water is piling up somewhere. Okay, so that can change my geopotential and the isobaric surface. Another thing is that I have a fresh water here and I have a denser water here. Even though the level is same, okay, but because the density is different, my pressure will be different at this point compared to this point. It's clear. So my surfaces at which the pressure is same may not be the level surface always. It determined by the wind and other factors, and also by the density of the ocean. Okay. So we are assuming that my pressure isobaric surface or pressure surfaces are tilted with respect to geopotential surface with an angle I. Okay, so that is my angle. Let's take a point A on the surface of the ocean. So this is my surface, right? Sea level. And gravity is acting perpendicular to my geopotential. Gravity means G star. So G means basically G star. Okay, in the when you're talking about ocean dynamics, G means G star. So we are already dealing with that corrected G. And the pressure here is perpendicular to the isobaric surface. Okay, so the pressure here is perpendicular to the isobaric surface. So basically here n is a perpendicular vector to the isobaric surface. Okay, so that is my del P del N pressure gradient. Okay, pressure gradient is perpendicular to the surface and with 1 upon rho. Okay, so that is my pressure gradient force acting at this point. Now the problem is this is towards some angle and this is my gravity. So they are not balancing each other. They cannot balance each other, right? Because they are not in the same line. So they cannot balance each other. So let's look at this. So so we have to basically do a vector decomposition of this to see that okay which part balances G. So my this pressure gradient vector is basically now segregated into a vector which is parallel to G and a vector perpendicular to G. Okay. Now this will be alpha del P del N cos I, the same I here, and this will be sin I. Why it happens? This angle is I, right? Now, if I draw a line which is perpendicular to this line and perpendicular to this line, okay, perpendicular to this level surface and perpendicular to the isobaric surface, then the angle between those two lines also will be the same as I. You know, right? This is basic trigonometry. You have two straight lines, the between them angle is I. If I draw perpendicular vector, perpendicular line from this line and a perpendicular line from this line, okay, so those two perpendicular line also intersect, then that angle will be the same as the original two lines. Okay, so this is a basic trigonometry. You just verify it. Okay, if you are in doubt, put it in a pen and paper and just verify it. Draw perpendicular lines and see that the angle is also alpha. So that's why. So 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 this vector can be presented here. Okay, so this angle will be 90 minus I and this angle will be, maybe I'll draw it, just a minute. Okay. Okay, so this green one is basically the same as this alpha del P del N. Okay, placed it here. Now, this angle is I, it means that this angle will also be I. This blue vector and this vector. Why? Because this blue vector is perpendicular to this line and this vector is perpendicular to this line, phi equals to constant. Okay, as I said, the angle between them will also be equals to I. If this is the angle I, then this you get as cos I and the other one you get as sin I. Fine. So what is happening is that alpha del Q del N cos I is now balancing G. Okay, because there is no other external force. But then you have another component alpha del P del N sin I, which is not balanced and directed to the left. Since there is an unbalanced force here, what will happen? It will make an acceleration to the fluid. So the fluid will accelerate over time because you have an unbalanced force. Unless it is going to zero, that acceleration will not stop. And you have to, okay, so what is this alpha del P del N? That can be rearranged a bit. Alpha del P del N cos I. You can, sorry, sin I. Sin I you can write it as cos I, then sin by cos I. Okay, this alpha del p del n cos I is equals to G. So this is basically G tan I. So this left side vector is basically G tan I. So this unbalanced force will cause acceleration to the left. And there is only one force that is available to us, that is Coriolis force, which can balance this. Okay. So if the Coriolis force balance it, then we know what is Coriolis force. Fu is equals to G tan I. Okay. And this is our geostrophic balance. So now if we know the Coriolis parameter F, that means if we know the latitude, obviously we know the latitude at a given point, what is the latitude, then you can always calculate that F here. Then we know that, okay, what is the velocity here, Gu, we know the G, then we can always calculate tan I, okay. So that means what will be the angle of the elevation because of this flow. Let's go back to our first slide. So I know this is the latitude at a flow, something is happening, circular motion. I know how fast it is rotating, or at a given point, say at point A, how fast it is moving. I know what is the latitude here. Then what I can find out? I can find out that this elevation with this plane, that is I. I is what? I is my this plane between angle between this plane and this elevation, that is my I, right? So this dotted line is that elevation hump, and this is my plane. So an angle I can calculate. So there from here I can calculate what will be the elevation on the sea level because of a particular current U and a Coriolis force. Okay. So let's look at an example. I have few more minutes. I just next slide. Let's calculate something. So I have this equation. So I want to find out at say given latitude 45 degree. So latitude is 45 degree. Okay, so phi equals to 45 degree. So that is my latitude. I'm also assuming that the speed u is equals to 1 meter per second. Okay. So now I want to find out what will be the angle I. Okay. So if I do that, phi equals to 45 degree, this is F, right? 2 omega sine phi. At 45 degree, we already calculated what will be the F. You remember for the scaling. F will be ten to the power minus 4 per second. Remember, no? 10 to the power minus 4 per second, F. So this is 10 to the power minus 4. What is U? U is 1 meter. So my left hand side is 1. Left hand side is 1. This is not 1. 10 to the power minus 4. Sorry. 10 to the power minus 4. This is my, what is happening? Yeah. This is my left hand side. What is in the right hand side? G. G is about 10 and then tan I. So the tan I equals to what? Then tan I equals to 10 to the power minus 5, right? Now what is tan I? If I go here, so it is telling that tan I equals to 10 to the power minus 5. So what is tan I? Tan I is basically the length of this divided by the length from this origin to here. Okay, so let's talk this. Let's assume this is AB and this is CD. Okay, AB is my this angle length and CD is my this length. Okay, so let's do that. So then how that equation will come? Anyway, AB by CD equals to 10 to the power minus 5. So this is without board it is very difficult. Anyway, so AB is my perpendicular, CD is my base, and that is 10 to the power minus 5. So if I have to calculate, if I assume that okay, my elevation is about 1 meter. So elevation is about 1 meter due to a current of 1 meter per second. Then the length, how much length we need? Then the length will be CD equals to 10 to the power 5 meter, right? 10 to the power 5 meter if my AB equals to 1. That means my height is 1 meter. Because of this 1 meter current, okay, because of the 1 meter current, the hump, height of the hump will be about 1 meter. But then in that case, what is the radius of that hump? So the radius of the hump will be 10 to the power 5 meter. That means 100 kilometer. Okay, so if I go back to that original one, so if there is a 1 meter per second speed here, okay, and this is in geostrophic balance, that means the flow field is in geostrophic balance, that means flow will be clockwise in this case, okay, clockwise. Then in order to get a 1 meter height at the center of this motion, the radius has to be about 100 kilometer. So the entire flow will be of 200 kilometer. This one, the total length scale in this case. Okay, so the total flow will be about 200 kilometer. The center will be about 100 kilometer. So for a 1 meter current in a geostrophic balance, in order to get a 1 meter elevation at the center, you need to have a 100 kilometer radius. Okay, so this is what the basic calculations is. Is it okay? Any question till now? Anyone? It is clear?
Yes, sir, it's clear.
Okay then. So I think it is done today. The next class we'll see what next I'll do. I have to think about it. I think we'll do a little bit more about geostrophic balance, and then we'll see that okay, in a real world situation, how you can calculate what is the geostrophic velocities. Then we'll deal with the level of no motion, because we have to assume at certain depth there is no motion. Okay, so that is called level of no motion. So then, and then we'll look at thermal wind and other stuff. Okay, we'll go a little bit in more detail. If this is fine, then I'll stop here. I'll just stop recording.